All right, we are live, and this is exciting because I am doing a master class on fear over the next 4 nights. So, what's the intention over these next 4 nights? As you may or may not know, there is a virus out there which is causing a lot of fear and a lot of panic in people's lives. Um, when you turn on the news and when you watch it, even for just a short period of time, I was on Facebook last night. This is a perfect example. I try not to watch any of the video on the virus. And a doctor that I respect posted something. And so I started to watch it. And it started talking about the virus. And I started to get this panicky feeling inside. And I only was watching it for less than 1 minute. And so what I decided to do was to turn it off. And I don't watch the news. I've made it clear in a number of the lives that I've done that I personally choose not to watch the news because I found for me that when I watch it, even on a regular basis, when there's not an issue like there is right now, it just brings me down and makes me feel bad and actually causes fear and anxiety. So that's what this master class is all about. It's about fear. And this is my favorite thing to show you, but this is a book called Think and Grow Rich. It was written by Napoleon Hill and it was published in 1937. So the book is very old, but contains a ton of wisdom. And what I want to share with you is some of the wisdom from this book, which specifically talks about fear. Now, you have to remember that Napoleon Hill, he studied these 500 people his entire life. It took him his entire life to write this book. So the way that I look at it, and like my mentor looks at it, that if it took him his entire life to write the book because of all the diligence and study that he did along the way, then I'm willing to read it over and over because there's some really powerful information. Remember that he takes the 500 most successful people in the world at the time and he interviews them all to figure out what do they all have in common that makes them successful. So one of the chapters talks about outwitting fear because fear is one of those things that can prevent us from getting what we want in our life. And we're all very well aware of it. I mean, if you look at all the people that are currently on medications for anxiety and depression, it's through the roof, especially in the United States. So if I can give some information through this book to help anyone out there, that's really my goal. And just a quick summary of what I do. My life is committed to helping other people. It always has been. And at the end, I'll tell you about if you want to set up a complimentary consultation, how that'll work. Because I'd love to have the opportunity to work with you and to take you through a program that I went through that truly changed my life. So in the meantime, let's jump in. And the way that the format's going to work is I'm going to start reading the chapter, and there's different sections of fear. And my goal tonight is to get through one section. I'm going to read and kind of pause and discuss different things as I'm going. Sometimes I'll read a page, sometimes I'll read a quarter of a page. It'll depend, and then I'll stop and discuss a little bit. Remember, this is being recorded, so it will be available. So for whatever reason you can't make it through the entire live, there'll be options for you to watch and forward through to the point where you want to get to. So let me share the screen now, and I will pull up the book. Okay, so again, let me just, okay. So this is called How to Outwit the Six Ghosts of Fear. And I'm going to start reading and we'll see how it goes, but I'm going to stop and start and stop and start and we'll discuss. But there's some really amazing elements to each of the six ghosts or six types of fear. Okay, so let's start. So before you can put any portion of this philosophy into successful use, your mind must be prepared to receive it. So I'm going to stop for a second. That means just open your mind, right? We all walk into anything when we're learning something new. We have our own judgments and we have our own thoughts and our own philosophies. What I ask you to do tonight is just open your mind and allow it to take in this information, and that's it. So, okay. The preparation is not difficult. It begins with study, analysis, and understanding of the three enemies which you shall have to clear out. These are indecision, doubt, and fear. So again, we're going to be focusing on fear. The sixth sense will never function while these three negatives or any of them remain in your mind. The members of this unholy trio are closely related where one is found. The other two are close at hand. Indecision is the seedling of fear. I want to repeat that. Indecision is the seedling of fear. So if you are ever feeling fearful, oftentimes it's because we're sitting in indecision and we're not taking action on something that needs to be done. So, if, for example, you're in a bad relationship and you're unhappy and you're miserable. If you're in a state of indecision and haven't made up your mind whether you're going to stay in the relationship or you're going to leave it, and you're kind of in that middle ground, that in and of itself will lead to fear. So getting yourself to actually decide and to decide quickly, which is a completely separate chapter in this book, which is a great chapter, and maybe at some point we'll get to that, that's key. So remember this as you read. Indecision crystallizes into doubt. The two blend and become fear. The blending process often is slow. This is one reason why these three enemies are so dangerous. They germinate and grow without their presence being observed. The remainder of this chapter describes an end which must be attained before the philosophy as a whole can be put into practical use. It also analyzes a condition which has but lately reduced huge numbers of people to poverty, and it states a truth which must be understood by all who accumulate riches, whether measured in terms of money or state of mind of far greater value than money. So when he says here, riches, we're talking about not just money, we're talking about riches of happiness, health, prosperity, not just money. So when it says think and grow rich, again, it's not just about making money, it's about taking our lives to a different level. The purpose of this chapter is to turn the spotlight of attention upon the cause and the cure of the six basic fears. Before we can master an enemy, we must know its name, its habits, and its place of abode. As you read, analyze yourself carefully and determine which, if any, of the six common fears have attached themselves to you. So as we go through this, pay attention, because there will be some fears that stick much more closely to who you are and what you're about, and we'll get through how you can start to break through those fears. Do not be deceived by the habits of those subtle enemies. Sometimes they remain hidden in the subconscious mind, where they are difficult to locate and still more difficult to eliminate. There are 6 basic fears. So here we go. We're going to touch the 6 of them. But again, tonight we're going to talk about the fear of poverty. There are 6 basic fears, which some combination of which every human suffers at one time or another. Most people are fortunate if they do not suffer from the entire 6. Named in the order of the most common appearance, they are. So again, now we're naming the most common to the least common, but they're all common, but we're talking about the most. So the fear of poverty, right? The fear of running out of money, not having enough money, not being able to do the things that you need to do with money. Then the fear of criticism. This is a huge one, right? People don't do certain things because they're terrified of being criticized by another person. Imagine staying in a marriage, which so many people do, because they're afraid of the criticism they may receive if they leave. Will they be considered a failure? Did they give up too easily? Instead of doing what's in their heart and what really makes sense to them, they, do what other people, they act out of that fear of criticism. By the way, if this resonates with you, type in the chat below, yes, this resonates. Yes, I have some of these fears. Okay, so after the fear of criticism is the fear of ill health. And I can't wait till we get to that one, because you'll see the parallels to what we're dealing with today with the virus. The fear of loss of a loved one, the fear of old age, and the fear of death. All of the fears are of minor importance. They can be grouped under the 6 headings. All other fears. The prevalence of these fears as a curse to the world runs in cycles. For almost 6 years, while the Depression was on, we floundered in the cycle of fear of poverty. During the World War, we were in a cycle of fear of death. Just following the war, we were in a cycle of fear of ill health, as evidenced by the epidemic of disease which spread itself all over the world. So right now, I would argue, if we're looking at cycles of fear, right now, it's pretty clear we're in the fear of ill health, right? Fear of getting this virus, fear of going to the hospital, fear of passing away potentially. Fears are nothing more than states of mind. I want to repeat that. Fears are nothing more than a state of mind. One state of mind is subject to the control and decision. Physicians, as everyone knows, are less subject to attack by disease than ordinary laymen, for the reason that physicians do not fear disease. Physicians without fear or hesitation have been known to physically contact hundreds of people daily who were suffering from such contagious diseases as smallpox without becoming infected. Their immunity against the disease consisted largely, if not solely, in their absolute lack of fear. So remember, doctors are around this. Obviously, they're building up their immunity by being around people all the time. But look at the doctors now. It's pretty incredible, right? I mean, they're taking all the precautions, but they're getting in front of people that have an illness that could potentially kill them, right? So either they have a lack of fear, or they're very confident, or they're just, it's a combination of the two. Man can create nothing which he does not first conceive in the form of an impulse of thought. Everything in our life comes from thoughts, right? And did you ever think about it? You'll be sitting there, and all of a sudden, out of the blue, a thought just comes right into your mind. I should do this. Where does that come from, right? That's also part of this book, but it's a completely separate part. Following this statement comes another of still greater importance, namely, man's thought impulses begin immediately to translate themselves into their physical equivalent, whether those thoughts are voluntary or involuntary. And this is so important, right? This is saying that our thoughts, when we spend time on them and we pay attention to them, start to actually form the physical of that. So this is important because if in our mind we're always thinking about getting sick, then what could actually physically be produced is sickness. So here's a great example. Have you ever heard anyone that says, I always get a cold, or I always get two colds during the winter, and I get one, like, stomach virus? And every year, that's exactly what happens to them, because those thoughts come in, they plant into our subconscious mind, and our mind is unbelievably powerful. And what does it do? It gives us what we focus on and what we want, what we're paying attention to. And therefore, that person gets sick, and they get sick twice, and a stomach virus. So watch your thoughts, and if you have thoughts, replace them with something positive, right? Just because a thought comes in, you can accept or reject the thought. You do not have to allow it to come in. Thought impulses, which are picked up through the ether by mere chance, thoughts which have been released by other minds, may determine one's financial, business, professional, or social destiny. Just as surely as do the thought impulses which one creates by intent and design. We are here laying the foundation for the presentation of a fact of great importance to the person who does not understand why some people appear to be lucky, while others of equal or greater ability, training, experience, and brain capacity seem destined to ride with misfortune. Have you noticed people like that? You'll have one person that studied and done all this work, and they're not successful at all. And then you'll have someone that doesn't even have a high school degree, and they're unbelievably successful. It's because of the thoughts that they allow in their mind and what they focus on, and that's very powerful. So again, we have to pay attention to that. This fact may be explained by the statement that every human being has the ability to completely control his own mind. And with this control, obviously, every person may open his mind to the tramp thought impulses which are being released by other brains, or close the doors tightly and emit only thought impulses of his own choice. Nature has endowed man with the absolute control over but one thing, and that is thought, right? Animals don't have the ability to think and process, right? They're all do everything by instinct, right? That's how they do. We have the ability to think, and so with that ability to be able to use it to our advantage is very important. That fact, coupled with the additional fact that everything which man carries begins in the form of a thought, leads one very near to the principle by which fear may be mastered. It is true that all thought has a tendency to clothe itself in its physical equivalent, which we just spoke about. And this is true beyond any reasonable room for doubt. It is equally true that thought impulses of fear and poverty cannot be translated into terms of courage and financial gain. The people of America began to think poverty following the Wall Street crash of 1929. Slowly but surely, that mass thought was crystallized into the physical equivalent, which was known as the Depression. This had to happen. It is conformity with the laws of nature. So our mind and our thoughts have a huge power, again, as mentioned before. So we have to be real careful what we allow in. So now we're going to jump into the fear of poverty. This is the first fear we're going to focus on, and when we finish this fear, that'll be the end of this class, and tomorrow we'll hit another fear. But that was just kind of a little overview of fear in general. So let's jump into the fear of poverty. There can be no compromise between poverty and riches. The two roads that lead to poverty and riches travel in opposite directions. If you want riches, you must refuse to accept any circumstance that leads towards poverty. The word riches is here used in its broadest sense, meaning financial, spiritual, mental, and material estates. The starting point of the path that leads to riches is desire. In chapter 1, you receive the full instructions for the proper use of desire. In this chapter on fear, you have complete instructions for preparing your mind to make practical use of desire. Here then is the place to give yourself a challenge which will definitely determine how much of this philosophy you have absorbed. Here is the point at which you can turn profit and foretell accurately what the future holds in store for you. If after reading this chapter you are willing to accept poverty, you may as well make up your mind to receive poverty. This is one decision you cannot avoid. So again, we don't even want to accept poverty as an option. The more we think about poverty, have you ever thought to yourself, well, I wish I had more money in my bank account. I wish I had more, where you're trying to really conserve on the money and not spend. And then what ends up happening is the account gets smaller and smaller. And the more you hold tightly onto it, the more, it seems to get even worse. That's because we have a mindset of poverty, and we've got to let that go. Even if it comes in and we have the thought, oh my gosh, I wish I had more money. Then change that thought to, I have an abundance of all good things in my life, including wealth. I have an abundance of all good things in my life, including wealth. The power of that thought will be so helpful in comparison to, oh my God, what if I run out? What if I don't have enough? Should I buy this? Should I not get that? Okay, so if you demand riches, determine what form and how much will be required to satisfy you. You know the road that leads to riches. You have been given a roadmap which, if followed, will keep you on that road. If you neglect to make the start or stop before you arrive, no one will be to blame but you. This responsibility is yours. No alibi or excuse will save you from accepting the responsibility if you now fail or refuse to demand riches of life, because the acceptance calls for but one thing, incidentally, the only thing that you can control, and that is state of mind. A state of mind is something that one assumes. It cannot be purchased. It must be created. So again, we have the ability to control our state of mind. A negative thought comes in, let it come in, push it aside, and replace it with a positive, right? Many of us do the same thing over and over, and we get the same result, right? That's what they call insanity. But if you want to get the opposite result, do the opposite of what you've been doing. It's like that Seinfeld episode with George Costanza, where he decides finally to do the opposite of whatever he's done his entire life. And then his entire life starts working out, right? All right, let's get back to it. So fear of poverty is a state of mind, nothing else. But it is sufficient to destroy one's chances of achievement in any undertaking. A truth which became painfully evident during the Depression. Right? The more people, by the way, during the Depression, there were plenty of millionaires and people that made lots of money during that time, right? They changed their perspective and they found something that would work versus something that didn't work. So there's no excuse in any situation. There's always a way to provide a living for yourself. It's just using your thoughts to your advantage and thinking of different ways of doing that. Whoops, hold on one second. This is right. This fear paralyzes the faculty of reason, destroys the faculty of imagination, kills off self-reliance, undermines enthusiasm, discourages initiative, leads to uncertainty of purpose, encourages procrastination, wipes out enthusiasm, and makes self-control an impossibility. That's what fear does. It paralyzes everything. So we have to do everything in our ability to do what we can with our mindset to let that fear be pushed aside and replace it. It takes the charm from one's personality, destroys the possibility of accurate thinking, diverts concentration of effort, it masters persistence, turns the willpower into nothingness, destroys ambition, beclouds the memory, and invites failure in every conceivable form. It kills love and assassinates the finer emotions of the heart, discourages friendship, invites disaster in 100 forms, leads to sleeplessness. One of my friends just posted he couldn't sleep and he can't sleep. It's because of fear. The fear runs in your mind. Oh my God, what happens? My friends, they're sick. That's what happens. Misery and unhappiness, and all this despite the obvious truth that we live in a world of overabundance of everything the heart could desire, with nothing standing between us and our desires except lack of a definite purpose. You know, it took me 40 some years to get my true purpose in life. Although actually I take that back. My true purpose has always been, it's always been helping people. I've done it in everything that I do. But doing this kind of stuff where I'm really touching and affecting people's lives, this is what I love. And so when you find your purpose, you find your love, and you don't mind getting up and you don't look forward to the weekend because every day is great because you're doing what you love. So find what you love. The fear of poverty is without doubt the most destructive of the 6 basic fears. It is, let me repeat that, it is without a doubt the most destructive of the 6 basic fears. It has been placed at the head of the list because it's the most difficult to master. Considerable courage is required to state the truth about the origin of this fear, and still, hold on 1 second. And still, greater courage to accept the truth after it has been stated. The fear of poverty grew out of man's inherited tendency to prey upon his fellow man economically. Nearly all animals lower than man are motivated by instinct, but the capacity to think is limited. Therefore, they prey upon one another physically. Man, with whose superior sense of intuition, with the capacity to think and to reason, does not eat his fellow man bodily. He gets more satisfaction out of eating him financially. Man is arvacious. I got to look that one up. That every conceivable law that has been passed to safeguard him from his own fellow man. So again, we're not going after like the animal goes and tries to kill its prey. We try to go after people financially, and we've come into a society of greed, right? Where instead of everyone trying to help everyone, and again, there's plenty of people that do that help, but there's a lot of people also out there, especially these large corporations, which is all about greed. It's not about the people anymore. It's about taking advantage. It's about them profiting and the average person not. Of all ages of the world of which we know anything, the age in which we live seems to be one that is outstanding because of man's money madness. A man is considered less than the dust of the earth unless he can display a fat bank account. But if he has money, never mind how he acquired it, he is a king or a big shot. He is above the law. He rules in politics. He dominates in business and in the world, and the whole world about him bows in respect when he passes. Nothing brings man so much suffering and humility as poverty. Only those who have experienced poverty understand the full meaning of this. It is no wonder that man fears poverty. Through a long line of inherited experiences, man has learned for sure that some men cannot be trusted where matters of money and earthly possessions are concerned. This is a rather stinging indictment, the worst part of it being that it's true. The majority of marriages are motivated by the wealth possessed by one or both of the contracting parties. It is no wonder, therefore, that divorce courts are busy. Now, I can speak to this for sure. I remember, now this was years back, but when I started dating again after I got divorced, it was unbelievable. That was like in the interview session when I was talking to someone, it was money. You know, how do you have money? What's your job? What do you do? But it wasn't to find out what I actually did. The questions were pointed towards money. So if we can kind of get past the greed and move towards the love, I think that's where we find everything. So eager is man to possess wealth that he will acquire it in whatever manner he can through legal methods, if possible, through other methods, if necessary or expedient. Self-analysis may disclose weaknesses which one does not like to acknowledge. This form of examination is essential to all who demand of life more than mediocrity and poverty. Remember, as you check yourself point by point, that you are both the court and the jury, the prosecuting attorney and the attorney for the defense, and that you are the plaintiff and the defendant, also that you are on trial. Face the facts squarely, ask yourself definite questions, and demand definite replies. When examination is over, you will know more about yourself if you do not feel that you can be impartial judge in this self-examination. Call upon someone who knows you well to serve as a judge while you cross-examine yourself. You are after the truth. Get it, no matter at what cost, even though it may temporarily embarrass you. Like, see where you're really coming from. You know, some people are coming from a really great place when they're making decisions to do something to make money. And others, unfortunately, are doing it. And it's all about making money. And it's not necessarily putting the other person's interest at best heart. If we can make situations a win-win where everyone wins, I mean, what better place is there to come from? And we can do that. We can do that. There's enough money to go around where we can make it a win-win for everyone. The majority of people, if asked what they fear most, would reply, I fear nothing. The reply would be inaccurate because few people realize that they are bound, handicapped, whipped spiritually and physically through some form of fear. So subtle and deeply seated is the emotion of fear that one may go through life burdened with it, never recognizing its presence. Only a courageous analysis will disclose the presence of this universal enemy. When you begin such an analysis, search deeply into your character. Here's a list of the symptoms of which you should look for. So we're going to get into now the symptoms of the fear of poverty. So see if any of these resonate with you. And if they do, comment below. I want to know what resonates with each of you. Indifference, commonly expressed through lack of ambition, willingness to tolerate poverty, acceptance of whatever compensation life may offer without protest, mental and physical laziness, lack of initiative, imagination, enthusiasm, and self-control. So it's a lack of all of those. Indifference. Do you relate to that? I know that if you don't love doing something, in fact, if you really don't like doing something, you're going to have a lot of these in common, right? So then we'll go to the next one. Indecision, the habit of permitting others to do one's thinking, staying on the fence. If there's one thing that you take from tonight, it is learn how to make your own decision. Do not give someone your power. You have the power to decide what it is that you want in your life. Don't give that up to someone else. So many people will ask everyone else, what do you think I should do? What do you think you should do? Look inside of yourself, inside of your heart, and ask that question and do what you think is best for you. Doubt, generally expressed through alibis and excuses designed to cover up, explain away, and apologize for one's failures, sometimes expressed in the form of envy of those who are successful or by criticizing them. This is huge. It's so easy to come up with alibis and excuses. I didn't do well. I'm not making money because I'm not doing this because, and the finger always goes right outside. It never comes and points at the person who's making the excuses. And I can promise you that the excuses are not out there. If we're doing things that we don't like in life, we can change them. And so if you're not, point the finger back at yourself and at least admit to yourself that you're the issue and not everyone else. Worry, usually expressed by finding fault with others, a tendency to spend beyond one's income, neglect of personal appearance, scowling and frowning, intemperance in the use of alcohol, sometimes through the use of narcotics, nervousness, lack of poise, self-consciousness, and lack of self-reliance. So worry is, again, worry comes from the thoughts that come into our mind. So if we can act as, we put virus software on the computer to prevent the virus from coming in. Think of that virus software as the ability of us to accept and reject thoughts that come into our mind. So if we know something's going to cause us to worry, block it like we would the software, the virus software. Overcaution, the habit of looking for the negative side of every circumstance, thinking and talking of possible failure instead of concentrating upon the means of succeeding, knowing that all roads to disaster, but never searching for plans to avoid failure. This overcaution, when they talk about the chapter on decision, one of the things that they say over and over is you've got to learn how to make up your mind quickly and efficiently and effectively. And the more you look at all the negatives, you'll never do anything in life, But if you feel in your heart it's the right thing to do, and you've done some research on it, I'm not saying don't do any research, but if you feel like you can do this, then do it. Don't put it, over to the side, because you'll end up never doing it, and you'll analyze everything in life, but you'll never do anything. It'd be better to fail at something and learn from it than to do nothing at all. Okay. The right time to begin putting ideas and plans into action until the waiting becomes a permanent habit. Remember, those who have failed and forgetting those who have succeeded, seeing the hole in the donut but overlooking the donut. Pessimism leading to indigestion, poor elimination, auto-intoxication, bad breath, and bad disposition. That negative mindset has such an effect on us that there's so many studies that have been done on someone being negative all the time and them also getting sick, focusing on all the bad all the time and just feeling crappy. So again, let's look at another one, procrastination. This is a huge one. The habit of putting off until tomorrow that which should be done last year, spending enough time in creating alibis and excuses to have done the job. The symptom is closely related to overcaution, doubt, and worry. Refusal to accept responsibility when it can be avoided. Willingness to compromise rather than put up a stiff fight. If you believe in something and you think it's the right thing to do, stick by your guns and don't give up. If you really believe in your heart it's the right thing, then do it. Compromising with difficulties instead of harnessing and using them as stepping stones to advancement. Bargaining with life for a penny instead of demanding prosperity, opulence, riches, contentment, and happiness. Planning what to do if and when overtaken by failure instead of burning all bridges and making retreat impossible. This is a huge one, right? We often will say, I really want to do that. But we don't burn the bridges. There is a story of a famous general who goes to battle, and the ships come up to the shore, and they come off, and they realize that on land is a huge group, a huge army that outnumbers them by a significant amount. So what does the general do? He does something amazing. He burns his bridge. And how does he do it? He tells them to light the ships on fire. And the military that was there, the smaller group, watches the ships burn. And the general says, if you want to survive, we must win. and they ended up winning because they burned the bridges. They didn't have anything to fall back on, and they pushed to get what they wanted. So I'm going to say to you that when you burn your bridges and when you say, there is nothing else, but I'm going for this 100%, and there is no failure. We've all experienced that at some point in our life when we've done something that we had our whole heart and soul in, and we did it, and there was no other option. So I sound like a preacher, and I'm doing it because I'm passionate, because I believe in this information so much. Okay. Weakness of and often lack of self-confidence, definiteness of purpose, self-control, initiative, enthusiasm, ambition, thrift, and sound reasoning ability. Expecting poverty instead of demanding riches. Association with those who accept poverty instead of seeking the company of those who demand and receive riches. Huge piece right here. Surround yourself with people that are successful, that are like-minded, that are loving, that are caring, that will have your back. The more you become exactly like the 5 people you're around the most. So surround yourself with good people that have your back. And if they don't, fire them, and you don't want them in your life. I don't care who it is. If they're not supporting you, and they're not loving you, and they're not carrying you, and they don't have your back, and they're not willing to talk about it and get better and improve themselves, move on. Money talks. Some will ask, why did you write this book about money? Why measure riches in dollars alone? Some will believe, and rightly so, that there are other forms of riches more desirable than money. Yes, there are riches which cannot be measured in terms of dollars, but there are millions of people who will say, give me all the money I need and I will find everything else I want, right? When I get the money, then I'll do the things that I love. It doesn't work that way. You have to start going for it. If you had all the money, you wouldn't think about going to the store and you want to buy that clothing, get it. Because when you don't get it, I know the thought is we have to conserve. What if we run out of money? But get the things that you want, because what it's doing is it's putting out to the universe that you are worthy of abundance and that you believe in abundance. And guess what happens when you put that out there? It comes back to you. The major reason I wrote this book on how to get money is the fact that the world has but lately passed through an experience that left millions of men and women paralyzed by the fear of poverty. What sort of fear does to the one was well described by Westbrook Pegler in the New York World Telegram. Money is only clamshells or mental discs or scraps of paper, and there are treasures of the heart and soul which money cannot buy. But most people, being broke, are unable to keep this in mind and sustain their spirits. When a man is down and out and on the street, unable to get the money at all, something happens to his spirit, which can be observed in the droop of his shoulders, the set of his hat, his walk, and his gaze. He cannot escape a feeling of inferiority among people with regular employment, even though he knows they are definitely not his equals in character, intelligence, or ability. How many times do we walk around people that may have more money or that we think are smarter, and we walk around like they are better than us, they know more than us? How could I talk to him about money? It's called believing in yourself and trusting yourself and trusting the voice within you. You are unbelievably powerful. We're all equal. We're all the same. That billionaire wipes his butt at night just like we do. There's no difference. He just happens to have more money. These people, even his friends, feel, on the other hand, a sense of superiority and regard him, perhaps unconsciously, as a casualty. He may borrow for a time, but not enough to carry on in his accustomed way, and he cannot continue to borrow very long. But borrowing in itself, when a man is borrowing merely to live, is a depressing experience, and the money lacks the power of earned money to revive his spirits. Of course, none of this applies to bums or habitual ne'er-do-wells. homeless, I guess they're saying, but only to men of normal ambitions and self-respect. Women in the same predicament must be different. We somehow do not think of women at all in considering the down and outers. They are scarce in the breadlines. They rarely are seen begging on the streets, and they are not recognizable in crowds by the same plain sights which identify busted men. Of course, I do not mean the shuffling hags of the city streets who are the opposite number of the confirmed male bums. I mean reasonably young, decent, and intelligent women. There must be many of them, but their despair is not apparent. Maybe they kill themselves. When a man is down and out, he has time on his hands for brooding. He may travel miles to see a man about a job and discover that the job is filled, or that it is one of those jobs which no base pay, but only commission on the sale of some useless knick-knack which nobody would buy except out of pity. Turning that down, he finds himself back on the street with nowhere to go but just anywhere. So he walks and walks, he gazes into store windows at luxuries which are not for him, and he feels inferior and gives way to people who stop to look with an active interest. He wanders into the railroad station or puts himself down into the library to ease his legs and soak up a little heat. But this isn't looking for a job, so he gets going again. He may not know it, but his aimlessness would give him away, even if the very lines of his figure did not. He may be well dressed in the clothes left over from the day when he had a steady job, but the clothes cannot disguise the droop. And this is really not just what you're wearing, but your level of vibration, right? What I'm putting out there. You feel my passion now, right? You can tell I'm passionate about this stuff. If I were to present to you like this, well, I think that money makes a difference, right? What does that say about me? That doesn't come across as confident or a belief in myself, but I do. And by the way, we're almost at the finishing point of this chapter, which will then go into tomorrow, the fear of criticism. So let's read the next couple paragraphs here. He sees thousands of other people, bookkeepers or clerks or chemists or wagon hands, busy at their work, and envies them from the bottom of his soul. They have their independence, their self-respect and manhood, and he simply cannot convince himself that he is a good man too, though he argue it out and arrive at a favorable verdict hour after hour. It is just money which makes the difference in him. With a little money, he would be himself again. Some employers take the most shocking advantage of people who are down and out. The agencies hang out little colored cards offering miserable wages to busted men, $12 a week, $15 a week, $18 a week. See, we think we have it bad. They were making $12 a week. Can you imagine? Yeah, I know times are different. And anyone with $25 a week to offer does not hang the job in front of the agency on a colored card. I have a want ad clipped from a local paper demanding a clerk, a good, clean penman, to take telephone orders for a sandwich shop from 11 to 2 for $8 a month. Not $8 a week, $8 a month. The ad also says state religion. Can you imagine the brutal effrontery of anyone who demands a good, clean penman for 11 cents an hour, inquiring into victims' religion? But that is what busted people are offered. So, there was a lot there. I think the bottom line came to what the last sentence says. That is what busted people are offered. If we walk into anywhere, if we have a job interview, if we're trying to sell something, if we're trying to meet someone, if we walk in and we're not standing up strong and tall, and we're not confident in ourselves, and the thoughts in our mind are, oh my God, what are they going to think of me? What's the matter with me? No, if we change that to, I am strong, I am capable, I can do anything I set my mind to. I am no different than anyone else out there, even the billionaire. They may have more money, but I have a lot more in my mindset and who I am as a person and the love that I have to share. There's always something in there that you can point to. And when you walk in and you deliver information with that confidence, you're unbelievably strong. So again, we talked about the fear of poverty. We looked at the symptoms of it, and I think, eventually we're going to get into the fix of everything. But we've talked about some of the fixes that we can do and again, it all starts with our mind and mindset. So I'm going to stop here. Tomorrow we'll pick up with the fear of criticism. I hope that you enjoyed this. Again, you have to remember this was written in the 1930s, but the information is really powerful. So if we're going to take away a few things from tonight, one, trust the voice within yourself. Don't give yourself away to other people. Don't give your decisions up to other people. If I have to make a decision, close my eyes, take a deep breath, ask the question inside myself, whatever it is, and listen for the answer. And that is your answer. Trust that answer. It's better than anything anyone else could give to you. Fear is all based on our thoughts. So if we change our thoughts, we can change our fear from fear to whatever it is that we want in our life. We have the power to make the change. So again, until tomorrow, I hope you enjoyed tonight. And I look forward to catching up and reading about the fear of criticism, which is an amazing chapter, or amazing part of the chapter. Thanks again. Make sure to comment below if you found some value in this tonight. Did you get one thing that you could walk away with? If you did get that one thing, just comment what that was. I would really like to hear it. And I'll finish with this. I would love the opportunity. This information that I'm going over with you is just like, it's just like one tiny scratching of the surface, one little piece of sand in comparison to what I have learned from my mentor, Bob Proctor, from being with him and learning directly from him. There's a course that I facilitate called Thinking into Results. It's a 6-month program. It will, I want you to look at me and look at my eyes as I say this. It will change your life forever. It will, the things that you want in your life, whatever that is, you want a relationship, you want a new job, you want to start a new business, you want to be happier, you want to get rid of your anxiety. These things all start here. And so I tell you that reach out to me and let's set up a consultation. We'll talk and see. And if it doesn't make sense, that's great. But I know it makes sense because I know this stuff works. But we'll just sit and talk. We'll have a conversation. I'm not going to sell you anything in that consultation. We're just going to talk. I'm going to get to know about you. I'm going to get to understand you. I'm going to get to see what makes you tick. And then I'm going to show you if that works after that first session and kind of resonate with what I'm talking about. I'm going to give you a homework assignment to do. And then when we get back together the next time, we're going to go over that homework assignment. And I'm going to tell you how the program actually works. And if it's a fit, great. And if it's not a problem. Either way is totally fine. Because if it's meant to be, you'll do it. Period. That's it for tonight. Love you guys. Thanks for being here. I hope you found value in it. And I wish only the best always for all of you.